Instead of shitting on it, just tell me what needs changed and talk to me.
Hello and welcome, Horfure enthusiasts, for more communities. Whether you think Tommy is good at the game or know he's bad, please argue your case in the comments or give the video at least a little bit more exposure. Now, I'm Joshua. You'll know me in game with a couple of O's in the 66. I play mostly HMM, and I've played a couple of those HMM games on the TommyKay's server. As you may have guessed from the title of the video, I'm here to talk about his rule set. First off, the entire rule set, every single letter is in all caps. Now, unless this rule set is made for your grandma, that is not ideal, and like, come on, it looks like it was written by a 12-year-old. The rules are also not organized really well. Like, for example, we have rule 1, 3, and 4 about technologies that are banned, and in the middle of that, rule 2, something about the host. This goes on in multiple different places. But even bigger issues are that the rules do not take into consideration multiple known meme strategies, and it's horribly imbalanced. So let's quickly go through the entire rule set and try and fix it. So first off, let's remove rule number 2 and add a rule saying that the host must use the in-mods game rules. So this means there won't be unbalanced things like adaptable, Spanish veterans, sub-4s, etc. Which means with this one rule, we eliminate the need for rule number 1 as well, since sub-4s are already not in the game. Next, the rules that we have here, no modern tanks. That rule is absolutely useless. There's nothing overpowered about modern tanks. If someone wants to use them, let him use them. The rest of these rules so far are absolutely fine. Here you have a typo, which is not ideal for the official rule set they use on your server. The rest of these rules so far are absolutely fine until you get to this one. This one. Not allowed to overstack carriers. This is vanilla navy, in which carriers are not overpowered in any way, shape or form. There's absolutely no need for a rule nerfing them. This rule comes from a time way back before the Man the Guns update, and it's still in some rule sets for some reason. You can just remove it. Okay, next. No allied power drop on Ile-de-France. This comes from, I believe, a glitch in mods that use Vichy, in which when Paris falls, Vichy and the words like cap to free France, that kind of stuff. In this mod, there's no Vichy, so there's no need for this rule. And in any case, paratroopers should be banned altogether. So I'll remove this rule. Next, no justifications until Danzig War has been finished, and then Italy on Yugo and Greece. That's fine. The only change you could do to this is typically in the HMM meta, it's Bulgaria that justifies on Yugo and Greece. So if you want that to be allowed, just add a simple or Bulgaria. That's up to choice. You can choose whether you want this to be allowed or not. There's no reason not to have it be allowed. Russia does not need to justify. He has a focus to take all this stuff, but the justification mechanic still works. So you could either remove this rule or just keep it. It doesn't really do anything. Next, no guarantees besides for Poland until that civil war is finished. You can simply rewrite this and simply say no guarantees besides the starting guarantees. That way you can remove other useless rules later on. It also removes the fact that in this rule you're allowed to guarantee other stuff later, which doesn't make sense. Not allowed to ever guarantee Portugal could enter a faction. This rule is useless as Portugal does not exist in the mod. Added players, that's fine. This rule is useless because if France is still defending in 1941, the game is over. So you can just delete this rule as well. This rule is currently only useful because of how weak America is, because of a rule later on. If you fix the rule later on, this rule then becomes completely overpowered. So we'll be removing this rule for now. The rules about destroying factories, that's fine. That's to avoid people memeing Germany in particular and deleting their factories when Germany's about to kill them. That's a perfectly fine rule. These rules are all fine. You can mix 14 and 15 together to make it a single rule if you want to make things a bit cleaner. It's not necessary. Here, strat bombing, another typo. Also here, until first bombing, that doesn't mean anything. It cannot be pulled off of this area simply for 7 days. That makes way more sense, is grammatically correct. Next here, rule 18, remove this. Because if there's a fucking German 40 width medium tank, nothing's gonna land on that port, or even a light tank. You just need to ban like all tanks, not just heavy tanks, from being on the ports. This rule is perfectly fine. Yeah, there's rule 24, rule 20. It can be combined into a single rule. So we can just delete rule 24. Text sealing is banned. This rule is also useless because text sealing will be banned in-game using the game rules. Next, the no garrison order, that doesn't exist. It's the no garrison occupation rule. Next, this is the big one for balance. In the current rule set, total mobilization is allowed only on the Axis countries. The mods was developed and played and tested and balanced around every country going total mobilization as soon as it can. So this is very big and makes the game extremely Axis biased. It should be allowed, period. Some is only allowed a convoy raids is fine. This rule, initially I've never seen it be enforced, and it seems weird to have rules about the game, then just suddenly hear one rule about saying people should be like banned and stuff. This is obvious, and it's up to the host / moderators, whatever, to enforce. There's no need having the rule set be bloated further by this. This is another big one for balance. The mods was played and balanced, etc. around land leases being allowed to Russia. All land leases to Russia, they should be allowed, because in the current state of the game, in a long drawn out war, Russia does not have the same industrial capabilities that the Axis do, and in any case it dies in a couple months in the current set of this war set anyways. However, they must be allowed only once Barbarossa has started. Otherwise people are going to meme and then these that war with Finland. This war honestly is useless because of something that is fixed later on in the Italy specific rules. So we can just delete this. The one about paratroopers. Paratroopers in a healthy game, healthy rule set, should be banned because people who know how to exploit with them will do meme shit, and it's just not a fun mechanic for Hoi 4 multiplayer. So they should always be banned. Navy is not allowed to ever be on always engage. This kind of ruins fleet battles. So it should be subs are not allowed to be on always engage. Surface fleets should be allowed. Next, there's a few rules that we want to add to fix things. Like, for example, air volunteers. Air volunteers, they should only be allowed to Spain. Because in the current rule set, as you saw, there's absolutely nothing about air volunteers. And as such, for example, Japan could potentially send air volunteers to every single Axis country that's out of the war, completely ruining the air war in the Axis's favour. There's also a rule about Japan being allowed to kamikaze everywhere, except UK and USA bordering core waters, which means Japan is allowed to kamikaze the Mediterranean. As you can imagine, that's not balanced and not fun at all. There's also no rules about using efficiency with bombers by doing a different mission. So those rules are absolutely necessary. And I can go on, there's multiple other rules that are missing. I'm not going to make the video any longer by detailing every single rule that is missing. The playable countries, this is fine. Philippines is an odd one, but I mean, why not, I guess. Also notice no China. And it's not allowed in Tommy's rule set, and yet he makes people play China. So, yeah. China is definitely not balanced. It should definitely not be playable. Access countries, as you can see, no Finland. In the latest game I played on TommyKay's server, they had a Finland player, and it ruined a couple things. So yeah, hosts not enforcing rules, probably not even knowing Finland wasn't allowed to be played. Next, country-specific rules. You physically cannot do any of these. You can't deny them physically in a mod, and you can't deny this either physically. So there's no point having these in the rules. It says cannot invite Netherlands, Belgium, etc. And then here there's a second rule, which is also about not inviting things. So just merge them into a single rule, and just be like cannot invite AI until they are declared on. Much more clean, makes Ruleset much easier for people just coming in. The big, absolutely massive one though is no giant wakes until 39. Every single game that has been played on the HM server of the HM Ruleset, the USA is taking giant wakes as soon as the axis boosts water tension high enough and allow the USA to have an attaché. This completely changes the balance of absolutely everything, because that is a massive amount of the industry that the allies lose, and it completely changes the outcome of everything and makes it extremely axis biased, as the allies cannot punish the axis at all with bombing, for example, or with early D-days, as USA does not have the industry. Next, France. Same goes for the UK. These ones you cannot do in a mod anyways. No point having it as a rule. Next, for the Germany rules. This rule here is useless, as it will always be given. You do not have a choice. You're allowed to declare war on France. Well, France most of the time will be in a war anyway. And yeah, that's just not really a useful rule. A rule that you can argue for is you're not allowed to capitulate France until you've capitulated everyone else. But declaring is not the right word. This is a big one that Tommy fixed not long ago. Before this was fixed, it was even more unbalanced in the Axis favor. As you may have seen in a couple of Danks' streams, you got CLN twice because of this rule. Also because you lost Africa, which if you're good, you shouldn't do. So, yeah. Let's big up on Tommy for actually listening to the people playing and actually fixing some of the issues with the rules. That's a sentiment I'm going to repeat again with the Italy wars. So, you're allowed to join the war when the fall of France has happened? Yes. Allies have crossed the Rhine. That's just a dumb rule, because the Allies are never going to cross the Rhine, and if they do, the game is already over. Next, the Italian Navy is not allowed to leave the Mediterranean until the fall of France. It is an extremely dumb worded rule, because it means the Italian Navy can leave while Italy is still at peace, which means it can go through Gibraltar, it can go through the Suez, because Italy doesn't have to join as soon as France falls. So France can fall, Italy can move, and then Italy can join. This rule is extremely badly worded. And also the word Navy, it goes for both subs and surface fleet. So if you want Italy to be allowed to raid, for example with subs, you should change this wording to surface fleet to start with. And until, so you say Gibraltar. If you want, you can have a rule saying they can go in the Atlantic if they extend only Gibraltar, or they can go in the Red Sea if they have only Suez. That's up to preference, but this is the way the rule should be worded. Next, Italy has to join World War II by June 1st, 1940. Should also add that if France holds past this date, which could happen, should add, and Romania doesn't have a choice. This would always be accepted in a mod, so this rule is useless. Now this is the third absolutely massive issue with the rule set, is there's no rules in Bulgaria. First thing about Bulgaria, that shows that will be easily fixed is Bulgaria must join with the same rules as Italy. Join the war. Which means when Italy has to join, so does Bulgaria. Bulgaria can't just be a free, at peace country with full stability, full war support the entire time without being declared on. That is not something that is balanced. That is not something that should be encouraged, and not something that should be allowed. As a massive rule, Bulgaria has a national spirit which increases compliance growth, which means any territory you give to Bulgaria will have full compliance in no time and give Bulgaria all of the industry. So you need to add a rule saying Bulgaria may not own any territory not bordering its cores. There's also another big issue, is that in the current rule set, Bulgaria is allowed to core any territory. So that is incredibly imbalanced, because it means Bulgaria can potentially core all of Greece and all of Yugoslavia. When you know how strong the Bulgarian focus tree is, with the amount of production and the stats that the Bulgarian divisions can have, you know that that is not something that should be allowed. So you put some limit onto it. In the HMM official rules, Bulgaria is only allowed to have all of Greece and southern Serbia and Macedonia. So I will use that as an example for this rule set. You may choose, up to your own discretion, what territory they're allowed to core, and then this is just an example of what has been used and is known to be balanced. Next, Spain, you must choose and save the Franco. You cannot do anything other than that, so that's a useless focus. No limit to Lanises that go to China and Spain, but can only send guns to China. You should have some kind of limits, because otherwise this encourages people to troll the Spanish player by sending a large number of equipment, or it encourages, in the cases where you allow a China player, of Russia just releasing a shit ton of guns and China focusing almost solely on air, making it impossible for Japan if the Russia and China player cooperate. So there should be some limits. That's up to your discretion how much you want that limit to be, but there should be at least an index. With the rule about fixing air volunteers earlier, this makes this rule useless. Land volunteers allowed in China is useless, as land volunteers cannot be sent in the mods. Next, has to accept these. You do not have a choice. There's no point having these rules. So in conclusion, the most important things is there is a desperate need of rebalancing with the total mob rules and the giant wakes rules, as well as curbing Bulgaria, as the Axis have been winning every single game. And there's also the need to add rules against these meme and overpowered strategies that have not been thought about by the rule makers.